Just a couple hours ago, this broke. Adam Schefter. Steelers looking to add to the squad. And it's a name that no one should be surprised by. When I first saw this come across, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Of course. Of course. It's Jonnu Smith. So here's the Adam Schefter tweet. The Dolphins have had trade discussions with the Pittsburgh Steelers about their lone Pro Bowl selection last season. Tight end Jonnu Smith. Per league sources, those talks came after Smith expressed an interest in reworking his deal that is scheduled to pay him $4.8 million this season. With Smith seeking a new contract, Miami has sought a trade partner. Last season, Smith set the franchise record for a tight end in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. The Triple Crown. Smith's preference, per sources, is to stay in Miami under a reworked deal. So there you have it. We're in legit trade talks with the Dolphins to add Jonnu Smith. And like I said, my initial reaction was, and still is in a way, of course, like Arthur Smith, Jonnu Smith, like Arthur Smith just, he can't stay away from Jonnu. He just literally can't. Jonnu was with him through all those Tennessee years from 2017 all the way up to 2020. And he became a featured part of their offense as time went on. That 2020 season, 448 yards and 8 touchdowns. The yards aren't anything crazy, right? 41 reception. But the 8 touchdowns, that tells you something. And that landed him a pretty big contract with New England. That was the offseason where they signed both Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry to double-digit per season deals. And Smith got 4 years, $50 million to go up with the Patriots. So there for 2 years. And then even though Arthur Smith, he goes his separate ways from the Titans. Obviously, Jonnu Smith signed with the Patriots. Smith's the coach, or I got to be more specific. I can't just be saying Smith out here. Arthur Smith is the head coach with the Atlanta Falcons. He has Kyle Pitts as his tight end. A guy he drafted, actually. Yeah, he drafted Kyle Pitts to be his tight end, top 4 pick. Jonnu Smith's in with the Patriots. They're not together for a couple years. And then all of a sudden, Jonnu Smith becomes available. And Arthur Smith wasted no time by bringing Jonnu down to the Falcons and making him just as critical a part of that Falcons offense as Kyle Pitts, if not more, depending on who you want to talk to. I mean, the production was pretty much the same. And the difference is, like, Kyle Pitts is supposed to be your franchise tight end, the guy that's getting 1,000 yards year in and year out and making that top 5 pick worth your investment. He only ended up, the season Jonnu Smith went down to Atlanta, Kyle Pitts only ended up with 667 yards and 3 touchdowns. Whereas Jonnu Smith had 582 yards, 3 touchdowns. So again, like, yeah, Kyle Pitts, a little bit more production, but not by much. Jonnu Smith and Pitts, it kind of became a 50-50 split in the tight end room down there. And then Arthur Smith gets fired. Jonnu Smith signs with the Dolphins. And again, Arthur Smith, he just can't stay away. He needs Jonnu Smith on his team. You read in the tweet, Jonnu Smith had a career year with the Dolphins. It was a career year for himself personally and a career year for the Dolphins franchise. Set the franchise record in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns in a single season for a tight end. Arthur Smith, I guess, is looking at that and saying, like, oh, bro, you can't be doing that without me. You can't be having such a good season without me. Come on, bro. Like, we got to get back together. And I guess since Arthur Smith is the Steelers' offensive coordinator, he does have some sort of pull in what the offense looks like and what the personnel should be. So with the Dolphins not being too willing to give Jonnu Smith the contract extension he's asking for, and him being on the table, yeah, I can see why the Steelers are in these trade talks or in these trade discussions with the Dolphins and are looking to get Jonnu Smith. But should we be? Like, that's the question I have right now. We have Pat Freiermuth as our tight end, as our starting tight end 1. It almost is kind of like the Falcons scenario with Kyle Pitts. Hell, Muth and Kyle Pitts both came out in the same draft class. But like Muth he's our number one guy, right? We drafted him in the second round, gave him the multi-year extension last offseason for double digits per year. Like we have made it clear he's our number one guy. And he's coming off a pretty good year last year. 7-8 touchdowns. His second year was the best in terms of yardage. He had 700 touchdowns. Or 700 receiving yards, sorry, not touchdowns. Like, he's good for us, right? Like, tight end, solid tight end one. And then we just drafted Darnell Washington a couple years ago, who a lot of fans are complaining we're not utilizing enough. We signed Donald Parham Jr., who he's a journeyman tight end. Spent some time out with the Chargers, then went to the Broncos, was on their practice squad for a little. Never really eclipsed any big-time milestones or has done anything special, but is a piece, like as a depth piece, he's not bad for a number 3 guy. And then we also have Connor Hayward, and the connections with him are obvious, and he's done some stuff for us, but last year he's coming off of his worst year, and it kind of seems like, if anything, if you're reading between the lines here, that maybe he's going to start to be getting phased out. If we're having talks about bringing in Jonnu Smith, we added Donald Parham. Now, we didn't bring back Michael Pruitt. We didn't do that. So Connor Hayward, for now, job kind of safe. But if we actually bring in Jonnu Smith, it's like, what does this tight end room look like? And what does our offense look like? And how much does it cost to get him? And can we afford it? Or are we really trying to give Jonnu Smith a big contract extension here? I know he had a good season with the Dolphins, but with us already having Muth here, I don't think he's going to be hitting those numbers. I don't know if it's going to be worth giving him what he's probably going to be desiring. Now, that's the question. Is he only looking for a few $1 million in a pay raise? Or is he looking for something even that was higher than what he signed for in New England? Because he signed that 4-year, $50 million contract in New England coming off of his last year in Tennessee, as I mentioned, only 448 yards and 8 touchdowns. Only 448 yards. I mean, the 8 touchdowns that's significant. But with the Dolphins, he had 884 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns, 88 receptions, like I talked about. And what Schefter said in the tweet, he set the Dolphins franchise record in those 3 categories. So if he got that with the Patriots coming off of that season, which was a good season, but not as good as what he put up last year, 4 years, $50 million. What's the math on that? Like a little over $12 million per year, 12 and a half per year. What's he looking for? I mean, 8 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards. That feels like it's probably worth somewhere in the teens, 13, 14 million at least. Now, you got to factor in the age. 29 years old, about to be 30. So you're not trying to sign him for 4 years like the Patriots did. Not that timetable, but an extra 2 years, 2 years, 30 million. 3 years, 40 million. I don't know. Like that seems about right. That would seem about market value coming off the season that he just put up in Miami. But that doesn't really make sense for the Steelers because we're already paying a dude that type of money to be our main tight end in Pat Freiermuth. And he's, for the most part, delivered. Outside of his 3rd year, like he's been solid for us. He's been on a solid trajectory. Rookie year was good with Ben. That was Ben's final season. And then the whole Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky year, that was Kenny Pickett's rookie year in 2022. Like I said, 700 yards. His 3rd year was banged up a little bit. Numbers took a dip, but then last year bounced back and had a little connection with Russell Wilson down in the red zone. Collected about 7 or 8 touchdowns. I can't remember off the top of my head, but had a good season, good bounce back season, and is legitimately I would say at least a top 15 tight end in this league. Maybe you could argue borderline top 10. Maybe he's in like the 11 or 12 range. At least from the receiving standpoint. I know he's not the best blocker, but Jonnu Smith isn't like the best tight end blocker out there either. So that's what I'm wondering. Is this what we're trying to do in terms of adding like a weapon to be our... I dare I say I sound like a fool even bringing it up, like as our wide receiver 2 or our number 2 guy, because those numbers from Jonnu Smith, that's worthy of being a number 2 target in an offense. from a passing standpoint. 884 yards, 8 touchdowns. That's like a solid number 2 receiver right there. That would just feel like insanity though. No? With us already having Muth. Oh my god. Maybe we would add Jonnu Smith and someone else. But then again, the question comes up again, like, what are we doing on offense? Like, what's the plan? Trust me, I like having as many weapons as possible and having as many big names as possible. But I'm just saying, I feel like even if we bring Jonnu Smith, we would still want to add another receiver, some more insurance for that part of our offense. DK, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson. Those are our top 3 receivers right now. Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth would be our top 2 tight ends. And Darnell Washington. Like he's our third guy. What happens then with Connor Hayward, Parham? I think that's a good problem to have. Don't get me wrong. Good problem to have if we bring in Jonnu Smith. But we still need to address receiver, I feel like. No? We still need to bring in a wide receiver to Amari Cooper, a Keenan Allen, make a trade. Unless we're going circa like 2013 Patriots offense style when they were utilizing the 2 tight ends and had a bunch of like scat backs, and then they had the smaller receivers out there, and they didn't really have a deep threat. They didn't have a number 1 guy like that. At least we would have DK Metcalf, at least off the top of my head, because some of you guys might bring up Randy Moss, but Randy Moss was before they had Gronk, Hernandez, and then they had like Shane Vereen and like Dion Lewis coming out of the backfield. They had the smaller, shiftier receivers. They didn't really have like that outside guy, but that offense worked. So would we be running that type of stuff where we'd have Jonnu Smith, Freiermuth out on the field probably together 50, 60% of the time, and they're running routes. We're kind of staying unpredictable with it by having both of them out there. DK Metcalf as like your kind of main outside guy, and then Roman. But like that's the other thing. Who's the outside guy on the other side? I don't know. I mean, you could motion Muth out there. I guess you could motion Jonnu Smith, but we don't have another. I mean, we could get creative. Who knows, man? I think there's still another move to be made, even if we brought in Jonnu Smith for this offense. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against this at all. I'm not against bringing in Jonnu Smith. I think he's a quality player. If the price is right and the contract extension, the contract number ain't anything crazy, dude, even if it was like 9 or 10 million for a couple years, I'd take that chance because we could afford it. That's the thing. It's about whether or not we want to spend a certain amount on Jonnu Smith. We can afford bringing him in. We have a ton of flexibility right now with having Mason Rudolph as our QB1 with a deal that's like $3.5 million. And then if we bring in Rodgers, the deal's not going to be expensive either. So we have cap room not only for now, but we have a ton of cap room for the future that we could make it work if we wanted to make this work. I wouldn't be opposed. Like I wouldn't be opposed. I really wouldn't. I think Muth, he's got to be hurting a little bit right now because he's thinking, well, he at least got to be thinking, a good thing I got my contract extension when I did, and this isn't like a contract year or a big year for me that I have to make up for financially or anything like that. Because Jonnu Smith coming to town, he's going to be taking some targets away from Pat Freiermuth. He's going to be featured somewhat in the offense with Arthur Smith calling the plays and being the offensive coordinator. No doubt about that. His last year in Tennessee, and it becoming like the primary focus as the tight end there. 448 yards, 8 touchdowns, does the whole New England thing, comes back to Atlanta while Atlanta has Kyle Pitts, and Jonnu ends up with 582 yards and 3 touchdowns. And a ton of people are complaining. Falcons fans, fantasy football people that drafted Kyle Pitts earlier complaining, why the hell is Arthur Smith not utilizing Kyle Pitts more? Oh, it's because of Jonnu Smith taking the other half of the targets. But yeah, I'd be for it. I would not be completely against it. Like Jonnu Smith's a good football player. He just flat out is a good football player. I don't see the need as glaring for the Steelers offense as a wide receiver too. But I wonder if we have something else up our sleeves. That just makes me wonder. Let me read a couple of these comments. Terry just stopped through. Terry973. What is his run blocking and pass blocking grades, PFF grades? I don't know. You could tell me. I know he's not the most elite blocker. Trust me, he's not. Like he's solid though. I'm gonna think of Muth in a way. Johnny Smith isn't necessarily known for his blocking. He's a little bit more of a receiving tight end, but he can get the job done. I don't know what his grades are off the top of my head. You could let me know in the comments. I'd appreciate that. But in terms of doing another move, though, this also was reported shortly after Schefter's Jonnu Smith report. Comes from Jordan Schultz. Steelers have had preliminary conversations with multiple teams about potentially adding another playmaker on offense to complement DK Metcalf, per multiple sources. Pittsburgh is believed to be motivated to get a deal done at some point, though there's still plenty of time before the season. Steelers could have up to 12 picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. Notice how he didn't say specifically a position on offense. He just said adding another playmaker. So maybe he's talking about Jonnu Smith. The two names we know for a fact would be included in this would be Jonnu Smith, but then also from a week or so ago, Chris Olave. We did reach out to the Saints about a Chris Olave trade. Is that it, though? We're talking to multiple teams, so it can't just be, at this point, it can't just be the Dolphins for Jonnu Smith. And is that it? Another playmaker, that's it. There's no plural to that playmaker word right there. It's just playmaker, not playmakers. Like, don't just tell me it's Jonnu Smith and that's it. It feels like there should be another move. And if it is Jonnu Smith, whenever you're talking about playmaker, and that's the only move we make rest of the offseason for offense, in terms of offensive additions, then it's like, are we viewing Jonnu Smith as the number 2 then? Are we? I don't know. I'd be a little confused, but I wouldn't be surprised, again, because of the Arthur Smith and Jonnu Smith connection. Arthur Smith views Jonnu Smith very highly. But we've also seen how the Arthur Smith reunions have worked out with the Steelers last year, and it wasn't so well with Cordarrelle Patterson and also even Scotty Miller. Like, I can't get my hopes up that high. Jonnu Smith had his best year of all time in Miami without Arthur Smith. Oh, man. I'm fine with adding Jonnu Smith. I am. I think it could be an interesting wrinkle to the offense. Because, again, he's one of these receiving tight ends that will actually, like, catch short passes and do run after. And Rodgers does like to get the ball out quick. So I could see the fit there. I really could. Like, I'm almost trying to envision that Patriots offense, like that style with the 2 tight ends, the scat backs, the shifty slot receivers all over the place. Brady was more in his prime then, but I mean, it's not like he was crazy mobile. He was still very much a pocket passer. They tried to duplicate that a little bit down in Tampa Bay, bringing in Gronk. They already had Cameron Brate there too. Different, little bit more different of a style, but they had the big receivers there. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. AB was kind of their slot receiver. They also had Scotty Miller. Like, that's what I would envision. Because you know how we've compared Aaron Rodgers and this last stint of his career and what he's trying to do. We've compared it, at least I have, to what Tom Brady did in Tampa Bay. Where you knew, or at least I did, a lot of people thought Brady was washed after his last year in New England. I was like, bro, he can still throw the ball. It's just, you need to get pieces around him. At this stage of his career, you do got to get him a line. You got to get him weapons. You got to get him a run game. But, like, you're going to be able to cook as an offense if you can get all those pieces in place. And I think you could do the same with Aaron Rodgers, man. Like, his brain ain't shot. Like he knows how to read defenses. He knows how to call audibles. He knows how to do all that stuff at the line of scrimmage, right? Like that's still there. The arm strength's still there. Maybe the mobility a little bit less than what it was in his prime, especially coming off this Achilles. But if you can get him protection, you can get him the weapons, get him the run game, you could definitely be a contending team. So like that's how I would view it. Maybe it's adding the Jonnu Smith and Muth, that could be like the Gronk Cameron Brake combo with the Buccaneers. But what did the Buccaneers have? They still had multiple outside top tier receivers with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. We have DK Metcalf. We could have Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin be the slot guy for what the Buccaneers had at the time with AB and Scotty Miller. We still need that one more piece. I think we would need that one more piece. So I'm hoping if we do make this Jonnu Smith trade, there's still more out there. Why do I unfortunately think there wouldn't be though? Why do I unfortunately think that would be the deal, and that's it? It's not going to take much to get him. It's going to be a late round pick and then a contract extension. That's what it's going to take. And we have a ton of extra picks. I don't think the most picks we have for 2026 is all those third rounders. I don't think it's going to be a third round. Maybe we give them a fifth or sixth rounder. We give them the 2-year extension. Just don't make it anything over $10 million. Just don't do that. But for adding another piece of this offense and trying to be more explosive, trying to be all in for this 2025 season while maintaining our flexibility for the future, like this wouldn't be a terrible move. I really wouldn't be against bringing him in, but I'd still want another trade. I'd want to get one of those Packers receivers because we've already known in terms of this tweet, preliminary conversations and what teams the Steelers are talking to. We already know it would definitely be the Saints. It would definitely be the Dolphins. The other teams would maybe be the Packers. We've talked about that. The Jets with Allen Lazard, that with the Rodgers connection. Colts, Texans, they got busy receiver rooms. And then the big names. Tyreek Hill. Could there be a package deal here with the Dolphins? I know Jalen Ramsey's on the trade block too. That's a whole different conversation. What if we got Jonnu, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Ramsey? And just gave the Dolphins some draft picks. It'd be like a trade that gets vetoed in fantasy football leagues. Everyone gets so upset about. But like all those guys are legitimately in trade rumors and in trade talks. Jalen Ramsey's definitely gone. Tyreek Hill would fit the that extra receiver we're looking for, Bill. Jalen Ramsey, that would make the cornerback room busy, but I mean, why not just load up with JPJ, Jalen Ramsey, and Darius Slay? Could Jalen Ramsey's obviously an outside guy. Could he play slot? Yeah, I think he's physical enough. I think he could figure it out. Same thing with Darius Slay. I think you could work any of those guys in the slot for any given situation. And then, Jonnu Smith, obviously. I mean, he's the name that's being brought up with these preliminary Dolphins talks. So we're not hearing anything about the Steelers actually having conversations about Tyreek Hill or Jalen Ramsey. I'm just throwing it out there, like a why not? If we're already talking about trading for one of your players, what about one of these other guys that are reportedly on the trade block? What about Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill? We'll give you some picks. Dolphins, you're in rebuild mode. Like we're not going to give you any players. We're not going to give you anything like too serious. We're going to have to figure out the contracts with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, the extensions. We'll give you a couple late round picks. You give us those 3 players. And then Aaron Rodgers signs. You mean to tell me we ain't in the mix in the AFC there with that type of squad? Now, it's very pie in the sky thinking, pie in the sky talk. But I'm just thinking of other moves, other like receiver trades, playmaker trades we could be making. What other conversations? Olave, Jonnu Smith, Packers receivers, like a Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, one of the Texans receivers, Colts receivers, Jets, Lazard, and Tyreek Hill in terms of big names. Tyreek Hill and Brandon Ayuk with the 49ers. I'm just hoping that this isn't it in terms of adding a playmaker. Because Jonnu Smith, he ain't replicating that season last year with Miami. He's not replicating that. 884 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's not doing that here. He's not. So we can't be considering him wide receiver 2, even though he's a tight end. We can't be doing that. Unless Arthur Smith got something crazy up his sleeve and is really going to get creative with this offense, and we're going to go a whole different direction. The way I view it, again, it should be more like the Brady offense with the Buccaneers as opposed to the Brady offense with the Patriots when they had the 2 tight end sets and all that stuff that I described. That's how I would play it out. Because that's the other thing with our running backs. We do have Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, who are more scat back-esque. But Caleb Johnson is a main guy. And that would almost be like when Brady had Leonard Fournette with the Buccaneers. That's how I would view that. But we'll see, man. This would be crazy if this trade happens. This will just be this came out of nowhere. After seeing it though, you know the connection's there and everything, but it's like, man, how much does this really make sense? We'll find out. Let's read this last comment from Terry 973. Would Texans part with Tank Dell because they selected 2 receivers in the first 3 rounds of the 2025 draft? That's my question. But what's Tank Dell's deal in terms of his return and his injury and all that? But that's my thought. Not only do they have Tank Dell, they traded for Christian Kirk. They have Nico Collins, drafted the 2 Iowa State receivers. Someone's got to be expendable in that room. Someone has to be. All right, that's it for today's show. Omar Khan's working. He's cooking. Rest assured, he's trying to figure out some way to make this team better. He knows the needs. He knows what we need to address. Arthur Smith's definitely in his ear about this one. Wouldn't be a bad move. Would be a little confusing. Again, all depends on what it costs to get him, the contract. But then it's like that can't be it. We still need something else. I still think we need something else. It'd be a great problem to have. I think it would be interesting to see how it all played out with Jonnu Smith. If we make this Jonnu Smith trade and we also sign Amari Cooper, we trade for a number 2 receiver, like an outside receiver, like a Romeo Doubs or something. It's going to be interesting how the snaps get allocated, who ends up making the team, who's expendable, all that stuff. Great problem to have. A problem we've been seeking for a little bit from an offensive standpoint. Oh, we have too many good players. When's the last time we said something like that? All right. Yeah, I'm officially out of here. Hope you guys enjoy your Thursday, your weekend. I will be back 6 p.m. next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm out of here. Here we go, Steelers. Peace.